so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. My name is Donnie, joined every week by my co-host Richie Bradshaw. Before we get into everything, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment on the video below. Let us know what your favorite cereal is. We will get into that a little bit later. A lot to talk about today. DeAndre Hopkins and Budda Baker mostly. But before we dive into all that, Richie Bradshaw, how are you, my man?
I'm doing good. I have absolutely no complaints. It's another beautiful day in Arizona to be talking about football as we inch closer and closer and closer to or not spring. I was going to say spring to training camp.
Yeah, you're still locked on Sun Devils over there, huh?
Yes, and their training camp kicks off at the end of the month. So
Are
I am
they
very
up north
excited.
in Flagstaff or no?
They'll be doing some of their workouts at Frank Cush's property, so I'm not sure whereabouts that is. I can't remember if it's that far north, but they are going to be doing some of those practices there, which is great because they haven't done it the last few years under Herm. So Kenny Dillingham, who wants to reassert, the vibe of ASU football, I'll talk about it more on the podcast. We're here to talk about Arizona Cardinals, baby.
Where can people follow and subscribe to your Arizona State Sun Devil podcast?
Yeah, well, you can always follow me on Twitter at RichieBrats36, and you can follow the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. We are projecting that podcast wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, if you want to see my beautiful face.
Man, that's crazy. It's almost as if you do that podcast every day. But moving
Something
on.
like that.
Yeah, really. Before we get into the Budda Baker and what his potential contract may look like, DeAndre Hopkins is still looking for that potential contract. And he was released over a month ago by the Cardinals. Hasn't really gotten any traction. He did take visits with the Titans and the New England Patriots. Hasn't really seen anything lately. Not really surprising because a veteran guy like that, and you have to remember, even whenever Hopkins was here in Arizona, he really didn't practice all that much throughout the practice week. I don't think he's very keen on jumping right into a brand new training camp with a brand new team over the age of 30. But nonetheless, it doesn't really seem like there's a big market for what DeAndre Hopkins wants. Can we first start with just your initial thoughts and just overall takeaways from DeAndre Hopkins not being on the football team yet?
I think it's a double-edged sword when you're taking a look at the DeAndre Hopkins situation, because in one sense, you're kind of stunned that he hasn't signed with the team. You're also kind of taken back by the fact that it feels like his suitors it feels like it's a much smaller pool than maybe you would think. Like you have the two front runners, right? The Tennessee Titans and the New England Patriots. But other than that, it feels like we're not hearing any other teams. Baltimore Ravens were really, really linked to him for the longest time, but that was also before they drafted Zay Jones and signed Nelson Aguilar and Odell Beckham and all that. But the Kansas City Chiefs, it feels like we haven't heard very much from them. There's several other teams as well that could. Buffalo, yeah, is another really big one, right? Because Gabe Davis has been inconsistent, and they could use a guy who's more consistent on the outside with Stephon Diggs, but it feels like his market's not as big as we thought. Now, granted, he is being heavily pursued by the Titans and the Patriots, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I feel like this has just been a really intriguing situation because it's yes, he's still DeAndre Hopkins. He was on pace for 1,100 yards last year. He was going to be really close to double-digit touchdowns if he wasn't at that. Or no, he would have been short. The year previous, he was a touchdown machine. He wasn't a touchdown machine last year. But nevertheless, when he's on the field, he's still that Hall of Fame caliber player. It's just the problem has been he's missed time the last 2 years, both with injury and suspension a year ago. So it's just a very difficult situation to totally and fairly evaluate, I suppose. But bottom line, this is still a very, very good football player. I will tell you, I'm not shocked he hasn't signed yet because I think he's taking this process the right way and taking his time to figure out where he wants to end up and whatnot. So from that standpoint, I think it makes a lot of sense the way he's going about it. But from a very generic fan's perspective, it is crazy he hasn't signed. But again, there's a lot of moving parts here that make it so you understand why he hasn't signed yet.
I think if there were a high volume of teams trying to fight for his signature, and there probably are, but the two teams who notably stick out, like you said, are the Titans and the Patriots. And when you look at what DeAndre wanted heading into free agency, or even before, whenever he was heavily involved in trade rumors, he wanted to compete for a ring and he wanted a payday. And so often in the NFL, like you can't have your cake and eat it too. It really needs to be one or the other. And I don't know if you saw those reports, but after DeAndre was released, it's funny you brought up the Kansas City Chiefs, and I mean it makes sense from chasing a ring standpoint because Hopkins is over the age of 30. He's made his money. That's really the only thing missing from his resume. He's like making that like deep postseason push and competing for a Super Bowl. And if you're trying to do either of those two things, what better team to land on with Kansas City and the opportunity to play with Patrick Mahomes, and in front of a place that just loves their football, right?
Right.
They
You would probably be the number one receiver there. I know they love Kadarius Toney, and there's that potential of Justin Ross if he's finally healthy, but I think he would walk into that situation and probably be the number one receiver there.
Right. And you could talk about how Hopkins is over the age of 30 and how he really can't create separation like he used to whenever he was a little bit younger, how he's kind of like slowing down, how he's lost a step. When you throw the ball his direction, he comes down with it. Like
Yeah.
the things we have seen him do over the last couple of years has just been nothing short of astonishing, right? But and we say this all the time, the NFL is not a what have you done for me league, is what can you do for me league. And I think you need to look at DeAndre Hopkins, very simple, black and white on pen and paper. He's just not the receiver he used to be. And you can't really justify that $19.45 million salary price tag he had heading to 2023. And going back to the report I was alluding to, apparently the Cardinals and the Chiefs had a deal worked out around draft time to send DeAndre Hopkins to Kansas City. But the one thing that messed everything up, Richie, was the Odell Beckham Jr. contract. Odell got $15 million from the Baltimore Ravens, and DeAndre saw that and said, you know what, I'm not taking anything less than that. And then from there, his market kind of just tanked. Now, whether or not push will come to shove and he'll get close to that money kind of remains to be seen. I'd be interested to see and hear what kind of figures are being thrown around right now. But, I mean, do you think DeAndre can get that Odell contract even if it's just for one season?
I think so, from a team that is desperate, which are the two teams that we're looking at, the Patriots and the Titans. Look at what the Titans have. They got second-year man Treylon Burks, who they're really hoping will take that step forward. And if you look at that position chart, Nani, there's nothing there.
Yep.
It is ridiculously bad. So they would be one of those teams, especially if they believe they can still compete for a playoff spot. And if you look at that division, it's the Jaguars and everyone else. The Colts are a rebuilding team. The Texans are a constantly rebuilding team. The Titans are only 2 years removed from being the number one seed in the AFC. If they can get some consistent consistent quarterback play, that'd be a huge step for them, but they're going to need receivers there. Meanwhile, with the Patriots, like they've got a cast of number two receivers. Like, I am one of the biggest Kendrick Bourne fans that there is. I really, really like him. Juju Smith-Schuster, great number two receiver. We've seen Juju at his best when he is a number two with an established number one receiver. And they've got a handful of other guys that are like interesting as well. But you plug DeAndre Hopkins into that offense and suddenly turns into no excuses for Mac Jones. But again, you give Mac Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Kendrick Bourne, that I'm not gonna lie, Donnie. That is one of the best 1-2-3 receiver combos in the AFC, let alone the NFL.
And an actual offensive coordinator too.
Yeah, with a very, let's be honest, he's a very good coordinator. Not so much a head coach, but Bill O'Brien definitely knows what he's doing when he's working with those kind of guys. So I look at that situation and it turns into like, how much are you willing to spend on these guys? How much are you willing to put into a receiver who's over 30 years old, but when he has played, he has looked very, very good. Like, I will actually respectfully disagree with you saying that he's lost a step. I think that he's still the receiver he was. Will he lose a step? Of course, because he is over 30 years old and he's been banged up. My thing is when he's on the field, I don't know if I can name 5 receivers that are better than him when he's on the field. Like, he is just so good. You mentioned the ability to come down with the football. He's one of the best jump ball receivers in the league. Like,
Yeah.
no further evidence is needed than the Buffalo Bills game that the Cardinals played a few years ago, where he goes up in triple coverage, not just triple coverage, but 3 of the best secondary players in the league with Trey White, Jordan Poyer, and Micah Hyde. Come on. But yeah, bottom line, those are the teams that should be looking to give him a nice payday. And if the Ravens are giving Odell that kind of money after sitting out an entire year recovering from an ACL injury because they're a desperate team for wide receivers, I think that you should look at the Bills and the Titans as a team who are desperate for wide receivers to shell out that kind of money. I still think he's worth it. But again, we're just going to respectfully disagree with that. There's valid points for both sides. In fact, I want you guys to leave a comment on YouTube and let us know where you fall on the DeAndre Hopkins argument. Do you still think he's a great receiver like me, or do you think he's lost a step like Donnie's saying? Let us know.
What's crazy is I think he's still a great receiver, but I also at the same time think he's not quite as fast. He's not quite as quick coming in and out of those breaks.
No doubt.
But
And that comes with the age.
Right. No. And when you turn 30 years old playing any position in the sport of football, it's kind of bound to happen. But like I alluded to a little bit earlier, he still comes down with, if I feel like everything you throw his way, I feel like he at least gets a hand on it. And sometimes that's all he needs is one hand. I think about the touchdown grab he had against the Minnesota Vikings last year, where he just reached over like his boy Odell. Yeah. And went and got it. Nonetheless, though, the more I sit and the more I think about it, he might be waiting for one of those teams like a Kansas City Chiefs, like a Buffalo Bills, to come through with the money if they start to get really, really desperate. Because there's no way both of those teams were considered the top 2 dogs in the market whenever he first got released, and then they just disappeared with interest, right? Like you have to figure it. I forgot who described it as like an arms race between the two to go get DeAndre Hopkins, because you would have to think whoever got D-Hop would just make themselves just that much better than the other team in that scenario. Who's the guy up for extension in Kansas City right now that they're trying to work through? Is it Chris Jones?
It might be. That sounds
I
right.
know
they're
trying to restructure somebody. They're trying to restructure money, which I think will lower their cap hit this year and would free up some space to go get DeAndre Hopkins. That would be something to watch for, but we're still a couple weeks away from training camp, so I really wouldn't expect DeAndre to sign somewhere at least within the next week. But you never know with a guy like him. He definitely moves at the pace of his own drum, so expect the unexpected whenever it comes to D-Hop.
Love it.
Now, flipping sides to somebody who actually still plays for the Arizona Cardinals, Budda Baker, our boy Budda Baker, went through a very, very long offseason of speculation, rumors after he decided to go public with his trade request. He told the Cardinals to make me the highest paid safety in the league or trade me. He hasn't been traded. He hasn't been made the highest paid safety in the league quite yet, but the two sides are in negotiations right now. So 9.9 out of 10 of people seem to think that Budda Baker is going to stay in Arizona, but for that to happen, Budda's going to want to play on a new contract. And what will that look like, Richie Bradshaw? This is his current contract right now via Spot Track. He has 2 years left on his deal. Richie, there's 2 numbers I'm looking at right now. They're both the same value. Tell me what the problem is here.
It's that guaranteed salary, my friend.
Yes, sir.
$0.00 for 2023 and 2024.
Now, that would be a problem for anybody, but especially a problem for somebody considered a top 5 player at their position on a rebuilding team who is not going to be competing this year. Budda Baker genuinely has stayed healthy throughout his career. He did kind of battle injury towards the end of the 2022 season. I look at the salary of $13 million. I look at the salary of $14.2 million. I know that's still a good chunk of money, but no guaranteed money, especially if you're going to be putting your body on the line for the Arizona Cardinals in 2023. That's just something Budda Baker's not going to do.
No, and he shouldn't, because if we're being honest, Donnie, can you name 3 players on this Cardinals team that are better than Budda Baker?
No.
I
can't.
I don't think I could. So at a minimum, he's a top 3 player on the Arizona Cardinals, if not top 2, and he's not 2, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
he is pound for pound one of the best safeties in football across the NFL. This is probably a top 5 safety. I think the only guys you would definitively take ahead of him are Derwin James and Minka Fitzpatrick. Other than that, you can make arguments for several other guys because if we're being honest, this is a very good safety league right now. There's a lot of guys scattered throughout the NFL who are very good safeties, but I just don't know how many of those guys you would for sure take ahead of Budda. And don't get me wrong, safety is not exactly a position that you're dying to shell out big time money for. You see a lot of teams that are able to get away with cheaper guys, and the Cardinals do have Jalen Thompson on a contract right now, so it wouldn't be easy to retain them. But again, this is a guy you want to retain, not just from a player standpoint, but this is a vocal leader in your locker room. This is a guy who really epitomizes what it means to be an Arizona Cardinal. He's the rally the troops guy. He is absolutely the voice of the locker room. He's one of the most identifiable players with the Arizona Cardinals right now. The casual fans probably know Budda Baker, and that's pretty remarkable to say for a safety. So to me, this is a player that you just, unless you get a heck of a good deal, someone offers you a second round pick that you know is going to be inside the top 50 or top 40, that's really hard to turn down, especially knowing that you have to give him another payday. But Donnie, what's the other really interesting number that we're taking a look at there when we look at his contract? Me and you were talking about it off mic beforehand.
Would it be his age?
It's his age. Because in 2024, when he's scheduled to be a free agent, he's only 28 years old, which means that if you give him that extension, and if the Cardinals are on the correct track to be competitive again during this rebuild, he's only 29 years old by the time you get there. He's still going to be playing very, very good football. This is something that you got to take into account with Budda Baker, is understanding that if you are going to be on track and you take about 2 years to do a rebuild, you have all those top selections to be able to infuse your team with talent, Budda Baker is still a very important piece that you might not want to let go of.
I completely agree. I do want to touch on that a little bit later because those are all very, very good points. Just in terms of where Budda's contract ranks for 2023, in terms of cap hit, number 1 for both his position and the team. For cash and annual value in 2023, he's number 4 for both his position and the team. In terms of the entire NFL, his cap hit ranks at number 57 in the league. Obviously, you look at different parameters, you look at the different numbers, and I mean, I'll bring this up really quick. It's obvious what the problem is here. We already touched on it, but like, there's no guaranteed money for Budda Baker, and I don't even think it's like salary per season Budda is worried about. It's, hey man, like, this is my last chance to cash in on the deal. I'm 27 years old. I'm on a rebuilding football team. I'm the heart and soul of this team. I know you guys can do something for me.
Yeah,
you know, and like, was asking to be the highest paid safety a bit of a stretch? Yeah, of course, but like, that's the gamesmanship and negotiation. That's hey, you know, you set the bar here to eventually come down here, and then everybody's happy, right?
yes.
So I would not anticipate him to be the highest paid safety, at least on an annual basis. But I was interested to see what the guaranteed money looked like, since that is so glaringly the issue here. So I went and looked. The top 3 safeties with total guaranteed money left in their deals for 2023: Derwin James to the left of your screen, Jamal Adams in the middle, and then Marcus Williams to the right, 42, 38, and $37 million. If you do give Budda Baker a new deal and he's really shooting for the stars, the top 3 average right there is going to be about $38 million. I can't imagine that contract extension is going to be anything huge in terms of years. Are you comfortable with handing Budda Baker $40 million guaranteed?
The only reason I would hesitate is just the age.
Yeah.
Is just because, so again, he's only going to be 29 by the time you're expecting to be competitive. But going into the contract, if it's 3 years, if it's a 5-year deal, he will start to get into his 30s, and you would maybe hesitate there. But beyond that, there is little reason to not want to hand him the guaranteed money that he wants. So if you're asking me what I think, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But this would also have to be a longer deal, which then you run the risk of how quickly is he going to be declining. Like there's a lot of different factors that would come into play there. But on a very surface level answer, yes, I would.
Yeah, I think what general manager Monty Ossenfort and the Cardinals are doing is very, very smart business. And I think we've talked about this a couple of times on this podcast is kudos to them for not immediately bowing to Budda Baker and his camp whenever they demanded to be made the highest paid. We have talked so much about how they're doing the right things during this rebuild, right? Like if you're going to rebuild, tear it all down, do things the right way. And that's exactly what they're doing. But what doesn't get talked about a lot is standing your ground as an organization, right? If you're a potential player looking to get paid by the Arizona Cardinals and you see Budda Baker throw a fit and then get paid the highest at his position, why not me, right? Why not me? So for Ossenfort and his entire front office to kind of stay pat, say, you know what, we're not going to make you the highest paid. We'll work with you. We want you to stay. We'll play ball with you, but like that's just not going to happen, at least not right here, not right now. Very much kudos to them. And when you look at the contracts recent safeties have gotten, Richie, Jesse Bates this past offseason, 4 years, $64 million. The offseason before, Marcus Williams, 5 years, $70 million. And even looking at the contract Budda Baker got whenever he signed it back in 2020, 4 year, $59 million. The averages are all close to each other. The guaranteed money is right around where they need to be, at least in terms of Bates and Baker. So contractually, the current deal Budda Baker is on is not asinine, right? He just wants a little bit more money reworked, which is probably going to have to come in a restructure. But I think all in all, I think both sides are correct because the Cardinals should not make him the highest paid guy in the NFL. But also, if you're Budda Baker, you see that zero guaranteed money and like, okay, we got to do something about that.
Yeah. It's just a
and
lot.
Also, it is noteworthy to say the top three highest paid safeties, just in terms of guaranteed money, have over 50% guaranteed in their contracts. So whatever Budda Baker's deal does get announced, I would watch out for that just to see exactly how much the deal is guaranteed. He has 2 years, $27.2 million left on his deal. If you split that up around that 50% mark, that's about 13.6, so about like $14 million guaranteed. If you don't extend the years on his contract, that might be around what he's looking at. But I mean, like you said, a lot of moving parts.
Yes. That's just the biggest thing to remember here. There's so many factors, outside factors that are going to come into play here. We don't know if he's going to be healthy over the next 2 years. We don't know the kind of play that he's going to put together. If it's based off of what we've seen, then yeah, this is definitely a player that's worth every single penny. There's just a lot that's going to come into play here as we begin the negotiation process. So just important thing to know. I would be surprised if he gets a new deal by the end of the 2023 season. I think this is definitely something that they take a look at throughout the year for sure. I'm sure there'll be negotiation processes, but I would anticipate this is something that, if it's going to get done, is going to be during the 2024 offseason.
Really? I don't think Budda Baker's playing this year on his current contract.
Yeah?
I think I'll walk that back a little bit. He's for sure going to do a hold-in if he doesn't get a new deal. He was for sure going to hold in during training camp. I think if a deal is going to get done, I think if a deal is going to get done, it's going to get done before the regular season. They're already in negotiations. Monty Ossenfort said it during mandatory minicamp that because Budda Baker's been in the building. It's not like he's just been off by himself. He's been in the building. He's been in constant communication with his teammates. But he's very intent on playing football for the Arizona Cardinals in 2023. But I mean, like we talked about, this game is very, very much a business, and he knows that. And granted, he's the heart and soul of this team, but he also knows that the Cardinals know he's the heart and soul of this team, and everything has a price, right?
100%. If that is the case, then yeah, there's no way you can't get a deal done before the start of the regular season.
And I'm just so interested to see like where the push comes to shove is, right? Like who's going to give more? right? Like, it isn't going to be Austin Fort in his camp knowing they need a guy like Budda Baker for the future. Because like you said, Ben, like this isn't just money, right? Like it is about the money, but also it's about ushering in a new generation of Cardinals football and having a guy like Budda Baker there in the locker room to show these young guys what it takes to win in this league.
I think you nailed it.
So it's like, how do you put a price on that, right? Like what price does Budda Baker bring to the table? It goes far beyond the stats, far beyond what he's able to do on the field. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things you need to consider, right?
Yes.
I mean, before we go, I don't know if you saw, but JJ Watt and his brother TJ Watt were both featured on the newest Wheaties box, which I think will be out for purchase in August at some time. First brother duo to be featured on the Wheaties box, so congrats to him. Before we leave, Richie Bradshaw, what is your favorite cereal?
I'm gonna get some hate for this. I do not like cereal, and I do not eat cereal.
Why?
Honestly, it's truly like, and I know I'm gonna get some hate for this. It's like a texture thing for me because it's soggy, and I don't like that feeling when I'm eating it. And I've tried to eat cereal several times. I've tried the sugariest cereals like the Cookie Crisp and stuff like that, and I can't do it. Like, even dry, I'm not the biggest fan of it in the whole world, but it truly is like, it doesn't make me comfortable when it's in my mouth. It's another reason why I'm not like big on onions and stuff like that. It's just texture for me that just drives me crazy.
Is it when it's just like soggy when it's been in the milk too long, or is it just like eating the cereal with the milk at the same time?
It's like I said, I don't even like cereal like when it's dry. Like, it's just, all in all, not a big fan of cereal. But what's your favorite, Mr. Druin?
We've been friends for 10 years, and I did not know that about you.
Fun fact, I do not eat cereal.
That's not even a fun fact. That's just a unfortunate truth. You can't go wrong with a good bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, to be honest.
The taste you can see.
Oh, yeah. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I think for me, Reese's Puffs are definitely a close second for me. I'm a big peanut butter and chocolate guy, obviously. Look at me, but Lucky Charms have to be up there, dude. There's so many good cereals, man. That's mind blowing. You don't like it?
Yeah, I'm sure there are, Donnie. I'm sure there are.
Okay. Well, until next time, I hope Richie does find the courage to actually find a cereal he enjoys. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. Go to follow our work on Twitter at Donnie Druin, at Richie Brads36, and follow our work at allcardinals.com. Until next time, see you.